Hi, this is Jeremy Clark, Executive Director of Grace Ministries International, and we're continuing our series of interviews. Today we have Ronnie and Jackie Mackensen, who are serving right now in Nicaragua. Hi, Ronnie and Jackie.
Hi.
And Titus Lloyd, who is serving with his family in Malawi. How you doing, Titus?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. So, Titus, you and your family have been on the mission field since about what year?
2009.
2009. And so that was when you arrived in Malawi?
That's when we arrived in Zambia. We spent a year there. Actually, 2008. Moved to Zambia in 2008. We moved to Malawi in 2009.
When you moved to Malawi in 2009, that was really one of our smallest fields just by default because you guys were the only missionary family on the field. Now, 10, 11 years later, it's our biggest field. And, maybe, Titus, you can, we work with a national church organization there in Malawi, and maybe you can describe to us the progress that you've seen in those 10 plus years, our missionary team working with the national church and how the church has matured.
Yeah, adding the additional missionaries has really allowed the ministries to grow in maturity. It's allowed different ministries to be developed, different missionaries to be able to focus more specifically in different areas. And so we're seeing maybe not more churches, but we're seeing churches that have trained leaders or more trained leaders so that they can actually better teach the doctrine of the grace of God. They can better teach what's in the scriptures. And so we're able to see a lot more depth coming out of our churches in our leadership. We're able to see real church plants and real evangelism taking place in some of the areas like in the Long Way, for example. We've added 4 different church plants in the last few years, based on work that's happened in our local churches here. And so it's been neat to see how things have grown, how we're able to start new churches with trained leaders.
Yeah, not only has the work in Malawi grown, but your family has. When you arrived in Malawi, I don't think your family was quite as big. Maybe you can introduce your family to us then and tell us about your kids and their ages.
Yeah, so Christy and I have four kids. Zach is 16, Matthew's 15. They were both with us. They were both born in the States and came with us to Africa originally. And then Maggie is 9 and Caleb is 5, and they were both born here in Malawi.
Well, that's a lot of fun to see your kids grow up, and that's where they call home.
Yes. This is definitely home. When we go to visit America, it's like going to a foreign country.
Yeah, especially with the snow, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So, Ronnie and Jackie, you guys have been in Nicaragua for how long?
Almost a year. It will complete a year in May now, mid of May.
And you guys got married shortly before coming to Nicaragua. Maybe you can share a little bit about your background, how you guys met, and then just your brief timeline there from the time you got married to the time you arrived in Nicaragua.
So Ronnie and I, we met in the U.S. Was doing an internship at Frontline Bible Church. And then when I went to an interview with you and Don, you introduced Ronnie to me. And then we started to hang out, and then we started dating, and then soon we got married.
Yeah, so how long was that between the time you guys first met and the time you got married? How many months was that?
Say,
3 months. Yeah.
No, we have March, April, May, June, July, August, September. 7 months. The moment that we met each other until we got married.
Yeah,
7 months.
Very quick.
And so from the time you got married to the time you got to Nicaragua, how many months? How long was that? It wasn't long. I know that.
March, April, May. 8 months.
8 months. Yeah.
You guys have had a brief time together, and now you've been in Nicaragua for a year, almost as long as you've known one another. And
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
so, Jackie, you're from Brazil. Ronnie is from the States. So you guys have come from two different cultures. You get married, and now you're living in a third culture. And so maybe you can share with everyone a little bit about that transition and some of the things that you've seen in your third culture, Nicaragua, that has maybe surprised both of you, or you come at it from different perspectives, and tell us a little bit more about that.
So we basically started our married life when we were on the field. So for us, it was very different from other people. I think it's a kind of like a mixture of how we do things, like how we cook or how we clean the house. It's a mixture of the American way with Brazilian way. Let me see, some things in Nicaragua that for Ronnie is very different. For me, there are things that remind me from Brazil, so it wasn't so different for me. But at the same time, there were things that were different for both of us, because, for example, how people drive here, it's very crazy, and for us, it is very stressful. And yeah, I don't remember other things now.
Yeah, I think what Jackie said is very true. I think, yeah, we started our married life finally when we arrived in Nicaragua, because we were preparing and talking about coming to the field previous, and kind of bouncing house from house during that time. But when we arrived, yeah, it was kind of a mixture of cultures being combined, and how things are done. If that's cooking, as simple as the meals for the U.S. typically, not always, but the dinner time is the bigger meal. But for Jackie, she comes from a place where lunch is the biggest meal. So that was kind of a transition, something very simple, but something that was different between the two of us. But yeah, we've combined many of our things, and now we have a way that we live together that's beneficial for us both. But yeah, as Jackie said, I think the biggest thing for both of us is driving here. I don't drive, Jackie does, so God's been with her every step of the way during that process. But yeah, that's been really different here, and I think in every country it's a little different. But just kind of learning the courtesies, the way people communicate during driving, to figure that stuff out. It's been different from the U.S. and from Brazil. It hasn't been the same. So yes.
Titus, your background is in computers and IT, and that's a lot of what you do in Malawi, but it's not everything you do. And so you've done a lot in regards to teaching and discipleship. Maybe first start off by telling us more about those ministries that you're involved in terms of just discipling and teaching and doing some biblical training, and then we can move on to some of the IT aspects of your ministry.
Sure. Yeah, so I work mainly with our leadership here in Lilongwe, the capital. So there's a group of pastors and guys who we are working with, training to be pastors. And so I lead them. We're going through the book of 1 Timothy right now in a Bible study. We work kind of, say I lead some of the times. I have one of them lead different times, just as an opportunity for them to study and practice and be enough to teach their teachers.
Right.
We do that bi-weekly. I also am involved in the local church in Area 23. Take books. We've went through 1 and 2 Timothy together most recently. So I've also worked with helping set up good systems and helping with some of the systems with accounting and things, doing treasury work and working with the treasurers and things within the church as well.
Now, Titus, one other thing I know you're involved in is you've been involved with the translation projects and some of the efforts to get more literature into Chichewa,
Yes.
which is the language that most people speak, or a lot of people speak in Malawi.
Yes.
What is that project about?
So a few years ago, we met with Steve Sherman. He came from Tanzania to talk to us about implementing a Bible school program that he had started. And we started adopting that program and working towards that program. And as we started the program, we realized that we were going to be very limited if we only taught the program in English. And so because all the materials were being created in English, that meant we would have to get them translated into Chichewa. And so the majority of our churches here in Malawi are in more rural areas and areas where oftentimes the pastor doesn't speak English, or their English is very limited. And so we knew if we were going to reach the majority of our places, we needed to get the program into Chichewa. So we've been working to get those programs translated. And so my role in that isn't doing the actual translation, but to work with the translators and get the text to them, get the text back and get it formatted, make sure that it's been edited properly, and then uploaded to our Google Drive so that it can be printed and ready to go for a class through our various Bible school locations throughout the country.
Now, Ronnie and Jackie, you guys are in Nicaragua for this year to learn Spanish because you're going to ultimately transition over to Panama and work with that team. So I want to talk a little bit about learning Spanish, and there's really two fascinating parts of this that I see. Number one, Jackie being from Brazil, she speaks Portuguese, and Spanish is very close to Portuguese. And then number two, Ronnie, you're coming into this, you're learning Spanish, but what a lot of people may not know, and you kind of alluded to this because you said that Jackie does a lot of the driving, is that you have a visual impairment. And so maybe, Ronnie, you can start off by telling us just briefly about, with that visual impairment, how that affects your life a little, and then how it is for both of you learning Spanish and how you guys have come along with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have a disease called Stargardt's. It's similar to macular degeneration. It's basically, I describe it as people as it's like being in a car and having the windshield of the car very dirty, but having no windshield wipers. So you see through the windshield still, but you don't see very well. And that's kind of how I see. So for me, learning, I've always been very dependent on listening and hearing. I went to college and I graduated from college, and I had to learn in this way, not necessarily depending on my vision, but depending on my listening skills. So when it comes to learning a language, it has been difficult because I've always depended on communication for learning. But we've had very good teachers, and I've had to study a lot. I've had to also learn in the class from the teacher, but also practice outside of the class using other resources such as YouTube videos with teachers and stuff like that. And I've really used that to help kind of just make sure that I'm fully understanding, because for me, communication is very important in general in missions, but it's very important for me as well to understand people and to be able to communicate with people. So I've really had to study a lot, and I've been really blessed too with my wife, because for her, which she'll talk about in a little bit too, she knows a lot of the Spanish because it is close to Portuguese. So she can in many ways help me by telling me how what this exactly means or what the idea is trying to be conveyed. So she's really helped me in that aspect as well. But I'll let her talk about that.
But Ronnie, real quick here, just so people, you just mentioned you graduated from college, and tell everyone what your degree was in. What did you study?
Yes, so I graduated from Grand Valley State University with a degree in biomedical science and biochemistry.
Yeah, it just shows you a little bit about Ronnie's character and just his perseverance and his aptitude for learning and how he goes about life. He's not going to let this visual impairment stop him, and that's something that we all appreciate about him. I know Jackie has mentioned that too, that she really sees that as one of his attributes that she really loves about him and appreciates.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, tell us what it's like to to learn Spanish coming from a Portuguese background?
Also, for me, it's been easy. Well, I already learned English, so learning a third language is easier, and also so similar to Portuguese. And we have a very a good relation with our teacher, so it's easier to learn because I talk a lot with her, and so it's fun. So I like to talk to her, and then she corrects me some things, and new things I learn, new things, some things we have this in Portuguese too, just with a different accent. So yeah, so then it gets easier.
Yeah, I've heard both of you guys speak in Spanish. You guys do a great job. You guys are really catching on well, and thanks for all the work you've been putting into that.
Thank you.
Now, Titus, let's go back to your computer background, your techie, aptitude, and the things you can do in that regard. You live on the campus of Africa Bible College, and that's been a place where we've sent a couple different people that are affiliated with GMI to learn and to study, and so it's been helpful to us. But I know you also use your computer background to help train pastors and leaders in the Grace churches in Malawi. Maybe tell us a little bit about how you're able to use your computer background on the mission field, and that's something people don't think about very often. Everyone thinks about going and being a pastor and a teacher, but also there's such a need in this day and age for someone with a technological background to be able to train others.
Sure. Yeah, myself included. I was also had no idea that my skills would ever be useful on a mission field. But yeah, there's a great need for people that have technical abilities who can do things like work with computers and things. I train, I teach at the college. I also teach our pastors. But it's a difficult transition for some of them. Many of the pastors that I've taught, will be their first time to use a computer, first time to touch a keyboard, to use a mouse or a trackpad. So there's a big learning curve there. But we are in a world that is getting smaller and smaller, and these types of technologies are becoming more and more necessary for people, even here in Africa, even in rural villages. You will drive through and you'll have cell signal, you'll have internet in some of even the most remote places now in Malawi. And so these technologies are reaching there, and it's essential that our pastors, that our people in our churches know how to properly use these technologies and how to avoid some of the dangers of the technologies as well. So we teach our pastors how to use word processing, how to use spreadsheets, how to use things like PowerPoint, with the idea that eventually these are going to be skills that they're going to need. Some of them more need them now. Some of them will need them as things progress.
No, I love that forward-looking approach to doing missions and preparing our pastors so we can be on the front edge of technology instead of being reactive, which is oftentimes what we find on the mission field and even within many Christian circles. So I think that's a real novel approach, and I think that's great. What I want to talk about now, Ronnie and Jackie, is you guys are there in Nicaragua. You're learning Spanish primarily, but secondarily, you're also doing a little bit of ministry to kind of maybe even practice together doing ministry and learning more about the Central American, kind of ministry lifestyle or whatever you want to call it as you prepare to go to Panama. Tell us a couple of things you've been involved in, even as you're learning Spanish, because you're in the capital, Managua. 45 minutes away is Nagarote, where our Milo, Raquel, and Lily are all serving. So tell us about some of the things you're involved in.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, our primary goal is language schools, but we spend Monday through Friday in Managua learning the language. But then on Saturdays and Sundays, we travel to the city of Nagarote, where the church is and where the other missionaries are. And we, on Saturday, they have ministries such as kids clubs, which is having ministries with the kids. And we participated in the things that they do there, which is teaching a lesson, playing games with the kids, of course, kind of ice breaking. and singing songs for, in Jackie's case, and her and with her group. But yeah, we've been a part of that. Also on Saturdays, Jackie and I, we started our own ministries. One of the ministry was the Taekwondo class, which has kind of been put on pause, but that was the ministry that I was doing, and I was teaching Taekwondo, and also trying to build some relationships with some of the kids there, but also having a little time to share truth with them. And then another ministry we started was an English class, which originally we weren't sure about doing, but we had some people ask, and people really wanting to learn English. So we started that ministry, and that's been great. And we've been able to really just share truth with them every single class, which biblical truth with them. And that's been a lot of fun for us. And it's been great practice with the language for us, even with the English class, which is mostly primarily in Spanish, just to make it easier for them.
Sure. No, it's great practice for your Spanish, for sure, to be able to practice some of the biblical language and be able to interact with people and get some of the terminology down, some of the church terminology down that you may not get in language school classes. So yes. Switching gears just a little bit, Titus, well, actually, in both of your fields, it's really interesting because, we are all experiencing or going through this global crisis somewhat together. And when it comes to this new coronavirus, I know that Malawi hasn't done a whole lot, or they've done some, but maybe you can explain the situation there in terms of what's going on and what restrictions are in place, if any, and explain the situation in Malawi as it stands right now.
Yeah, about a month ago, the president declared Malawi in a state of disaster and put in several restrictions in regard to the COVID-19 outbreak, limiting numbers of groups together, limiting things like restaurants, limiting things to take away, limiting the number of people in a car or a minibus, in an attempt to, keep groups from meeting, or big groups from meeting. There was a lot of confusion at different points as to what was allowed and what wasn't allowed, and even among churches as to whether churches were supposed to stop meeting. There was a few directives that came out that implied that churches should stop meeting. And then others interpreted it, no, it didn't apply to churches. You still can meet if they're under 50, and there's a lot of confusion regarding some of that. We were then supposed to go into a lockdown. That didn't happen. And so now it's still a little confusing. I was in town today, and it seemed like business as usual. So we're still trying to kind of interpret what is really supposed to be happening. How are we to obey the authority and do what's lawful, at the same time seeing that in practice things aren't necessarily matching that.
I'm curious, Titus, how do you view if the government does lock down Malawi, how would that practically affect the people there? I mean, Africa is very social. The cultures are very social there, and people are interacting all the time, every day. I mean, how does that look?
I don't know how that looks. I don't think it's really possible. And if a true lockdown were to take place and they were to enforce it with the military or something like that, it would just be devastating to the people who live day to day. I mean, they sell to eat today, or they work to eat today. The majority of the country doesn't have things put into savings and things like that, and so it would be very difficult for that to take place. And if they tried to enforce it with force, then it would not be a pretty situation.
Now, given the restrictions are in place, I understand that there are some things moving online and such, and the internet's become a bit more of a necessity. How have you been stretched in your IT capacity recently here, given all the different the restrictions, or maybe the ambiguities about what the restrictions are?
Well, we at African Bible College, we very quickly had to come up with a plan as to how we were going to continue having school. when they closed all the schools. We didn't want that to be the case. We wanted our students, both at our Christian academy and at the college, to be able to continue their learning. And so we very quickly had to come up with a plan as to how we could do that using online resources. And so we are proceeding using things like Google Classroom to allow classes to continue. It is a challenge for our students who, many of them don't have the necessary resources to access some of those things. And so it still remains to be seen how well it's going to finish, but we're doing as much as we can. Yes, it has put internet was important before, but now it's become essential. People have to have it to do anything. And so, of course, we've had some glitches with that, with just the overload worldwide of different internet providers and circuits and different things. We've had some challenges we've had to work through to keep things working.
In Nicaragua, I know that the government's done relatively little in terms of restrictions, and though it does seem there are a few more of those restrictions that are being imposed as of late. And it'd be really interesting to follow Nicaragua to see what happens. We talk a lot about Sweden, in Europe and in America, we talk a lot about that. But I think Nicaragua would be an interesting case to study. And but one of the things that is affecting you guys right now is that you have plans to transition to Panama, but travel is somewhat restricted between countries. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about your plans for going to Panama, when you want to arrive there, and some of the obstacles that you have given these different border restrictions and travel restrictions.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, here, like you said, the restrictions there really aren't any. We haven't shut down the border of the country, but other countries around us have shut their borders down. So effectively, we're stuck in Nicaragua. And our plan actually was to be here in Nicaragua for 1 year, and we're coming up on that date. And after that, our desire was to go to Panama and meet up with our teammates there. But as of right now, we can't really do that because other countries are in lockdown. Specifically, Panama, the country that we want to go, is very much locked down. We've talked with our partners, and they seem like they're getting stricter and stricter there. So at this moment, we won't be traveling on the desired date that we wanted to go. But our plans are kind of put on pause, and we hope to continue to serve here, if that's continuing to perfect our Spanish, but also serve at the church that's in Nagarote and help out there where we can as well, until the point that we can actually move to Panama.
Now, Titus, though there's some uncertainty just because you don't know how the government's going to react, how this global crisis will affect things in Malawi there. But tell us a little bit about, as you look forward, as a team looks forward, getting past this, what are some of the goals that the field has for the church and the relationship with the church and the development of the church there?
Well, we want to obviously see our churches continue to grow. We want to continue training. We've got a few of our leaders who are almost ready to graduate with 3 years of the Malawi Grace Bible School program, and so we're looking forward to that and seeing some of these guys who have finished the program and really be able to then take that to the next level in training others and seeing that continue and expand. We have lots of different ministries here because we have a very diverse group of missionaries with a lot of different skills. And so we're able to see a lot of different areas that we can outreach into. With Kambiri's able to reach out into the hospital because of the situation with Jane Nathan, areas in theological education, areas in even developing books. Bill Vinton is very dedicated to writing and getting a group of Malawians to work in writing our own materials that come from Malawi. We're not just translating other people's stuff, but we're actually generating our own our own stuff, our own tracts, our own other various books and materials that can be directly from here. And so we want to see some of those things continue and grow and prosper. So there's lots of different ways and lots of different things that we're working towards, but they're all ultimately, the goal is to see the message of grace spread throughout Malawi and to see our churches edified and strengthened.
Yeah, it's fun, Titus. It's been fun to see the progress in Malawi, and thanks for being a part of that foundation there as that team has grown and been built. Titus, how can we pray for you, the family, the ministry?
Well, we can continue to just pray that we have the right leaders to train. We can find men that have good reputation, that have integrity, that we can train. It's been a challenge at times on this field, and so we want to be sure that we're training the right people that are going to be able to continue in ministry. For our family, you could just pray. This whole COVID thing has been difficult in that the kids don't have a lot of the same activities, a lot of the same things they're used to doing, and a good number of their friends left last week on an evacuation flight back to the United States, and so our kids are feeling a little bit lonely, a little bit tired of each other.
Sure.
And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of people these days. So we can just pray for those kind of situations, but pray also that through these times that we're facing, through the interactions that we have with people here in Malawi, that we will have continued opportunities to share the gospel.
Thanks, Titus. Now we'll be praying for you. Ronnie, Jackie, how can we pray for you guys?
I think you can pray for us, specifically for our continually learning in Spanish. I know I have, and Jackie does as well, a desire to know the language really well so we can communicate effectively. And so we want to continue on that path. It's been good, but it's been hard and challenging, and we just want to keep pursuing that goal. Pray for our plans, as we talked about. We don't really, Jackie and I are big into planning and having everything lined up how we think things are gonna go down, happen. And for us, with all these things going on, we don't really know. We kind of have to we definitely need to be trusting in the Lord and that He's opening the right doors and in His time. So pray for those situations. Pray that we can be effective while we're here, and then pray that when we move to Panama, that we can hit the ground running and be working with our partners there and start that field and help them develop the relationships more. They've already been developing relationships that we can help with that. And then
our relationship with our teacher.
Yeah, so like Jackie said, we have a great teacher. We actually have our class in our house, so we've really gotten to know her, and we've shared the gospel with her many times and lots of truth about the Bible. And it's been really awesome to see her, be uplifted and believe in these truths. But we hope that she'll continually want to learn more about the Bible and learn more about God, and that we can effectively help her and guide her in that way. We're perfectionists, and sometimes we're nervous because we feel that our Spanish isn't to where that we can explain the Bible very well to her. But in many ways, God has already been using us, and we want to continue with that relationship, and in any other relationship that we have here or in the future, speaking a new language, of course. So these are things that you can be praying for us.
Now, we'll be praying for you guys, and thanks for sharing those requests. We just appreciate all both your families and your perseverance and sticking out during these difficult times and continuing to serve even though things are uncertain. And we appreciate that. And you have a good testimony because of that. It's inspirational, and it also just gives us an example of what it means to walk in faith. So thanks so much for joining me this morning and chatting about your lives and ministries. And we really appreciate it. Thanks.
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay.